So I'm here today with Sam Reese. Sam and I had occasion to be on a podcast together recently, hosted by a friend of ours, Jessica Kriegel, who's an extraordinary expert on leadership and communications and culture. And it was a chance for us to reconnect, Sam, because we did have intersection back 20 plus years ago when you were running a company called Miller Hyman. And I was so happy that we did reconnect. And when I realized what a wonderful and amazing career you've had, I thought, let's get together one-on-one like this to explore your own journey, but more importantly, the journey you lead so many people on now with your activities at Vistage. So why don't we start with what is Vistage, and then we'll fill in the gaps in between. I think it's fascinating what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, and I told you this. I know you're very modest and humble, but like you had a huge impression on me 20 plus years ago when I brought you to meet with my executive team when I was running that company, and you were like the first real purpose-driven leader I had met that was didn't just do it as a headline. That was really how you ran your business and how you thought about it. And that was what I tried. I'd heard about you, and then when I brought you in for to speak with my team, it just had a big impact on me and the team. So I just always want to make sure I honor you for that because it really had a big impact on me in my life as a leader.
Well, thank you for saying that. It means
Uh,
a lot.
um, well, Visage is world's largest CEO coaching organization, and at the end of the day, what we do is we give CEOs confidence to make the biggest decisions they need to make, which is really the business we're in as CEOs. What we do a little bit differently, as I say, world's largest, 45,000 members across the globe in almost 40 countries. It,
That's
it's
amazing.
it's an amazing business. Just such an honor. I was a member myself for over a decade when I was running that other company, Miller Hyman, and
Mhm.
retired for a year. And literally, when I got a call from Vistage, I'm like, that is somebody that could bring me back to it.
Yeah.
The strength of our business, as you know, Jim, is that it's anchored by a peer advisory model. We really believe that's where the best decisions come is a skilled facilitator who runs the meeting. We call a chairman or chairwoman, and then sitting around the table with 12 of your peers where you talk about the most confidential and difficult issues. That's what we think the best coaching comes from.
That peer model really is a differentiator, I would think, in the category that you
It
work in.
is, yeah, and sometimes it's hard for people to understand it because you know you've got to make sure it's confidential. You got to make sure you have intellectual property that creates conversations that get to the heart of the issue. We're really good at that, and really the key to our success is finding these amazing chairmen and chairwomen who want to give back at the later stages of their career. The average age of one of our chairs is about 65 years old. They've kind of all been there and done
Uh-huh.
that.
And how many people would normally be in each of their
Roughly
groups?
12. So, anywhere from kind of
Uh-huh.
8 to 17, but roughly 12 members, and
Uh-huh.
and they meet on a monthly basis, and these people, become
I would imagine some really deep bonds and relationships are formed.
it's sort of amazing, I think, as people begin to understand it when they become members is, a typical day might be someone saying, "I've got a transaction that I'm looking at." Someone might say, "I've got a cash flow problem." Somebody might say, I've got a challenge with my CFO." These might be the issues, and then somebody might say, I've lost my desire to work." That might literally be what a day's agenda looks like. It's everything from those,
Wow.
day in and day out business issues to personal issues. And we just believe that being one person, CEOs are one person, and trying to wear different masks is what makes us unhappy. So we try and make sure we think about them as an integrated individual.
So your own career, Sam, you worked in very big companies, British Telecom, Xerox. Of course, you really brought a lot of change through a very interesting time at Miller Hyman. That seems to be like the perfect training ground for you to make all those mistakes, so that now you can help other people avoid
I
them.
think those are our best chairs can say the same thing. They made big mistakes. I part of the folklore we like to talk about at Vistage is I was in my first CEO job, year 2000, 2001, and I actually quit because I was doing such a bad job. I'm like, I flew out to the board, told them I was sorry, I'm letting you guys down. This all I want to do is be a CEO, and I'm not good at it. And then one of the board members said, "Well, you don't." you're not that bad, right? But you just need some help." So you need some help. And he pointed me towards what was Vistage. And then it was a time it was called Tech, and pointed me towards Vistage. And I still think about those first few meetings at Vistage, how nervous I was going in as a new CEO with all these kind of seasoned leaders. And then by the end of the day, going, God, these guys have just as much insecurity and indecision as I do. And so you're right. I made a ton of mistakes. I still make mistakes. There's no question about it.
What's the you said that it's a name change. What's the origins of
Yep.
Vistage?
So, it was called Tech, the executive committee, and then they rebranded it. This is before my time, like, call it 15 years ago, and the word came from 2 words. It came from vista and advantage. So, being able to see over the vista could give you an advantage. The other thing you find so interesting, Jim, is that when it was first like, Tech or Vistage was sort of a loose conglomeration, 30, 40 years ago, and then it was all rolled up under one organization, and the people who were in that first organization were these kinda icons: Larry Ellison, Mike Milken, Steve Wynn, if you can imagine, um, a
No.
handful of other, I mean, really big name people that knew there was some potential here. So that was some of the orange. They saw this opportunity for people to really get better as leaders.
And what's the ownership structure today?
Today, so it's owned. It's a partnership we have with a private equity firm and our employees here. So there's about 25 equity holders in the business. We did a transaction 4 years ago that allowed all of them to become owners as well. And then we have a financial partner, just a great firm called Gridiron Capital. That's just a really high integrity firm, great business.
It seems to me, that the decisions we all have to make every day, whether we're, CEOs or, CFOs or just, leaders in a segment of our individual businesses, is to really develop the mechanics of better decision making. And it seems to me that's the essence of what you do.
I agree. Yeah, that is the essence of what we do to make sure that you kind of have a consistent way you go about making the most difficult decisions, always guarding against things that we as CEOs have to worry about. And this is part of how we run our businesses, just guarding against ego and confirmation bias, because those are the things that take us off course, like the ego that we think we know it all, and the confirmation bias that says we only want to get information from people that will tell us what we want to hear. Always guarding against that.
And it seems to me that if you've had success, building a team within a company, starting something up, fixing a problem, that you begin to feel like a hammer, and that's the solution to every problem you come across. How do you help people that realize to stay conscious of the fact that what worked in the past may or may not work in this
Yeah,
circumstance?
great question. That is exactly what happens too. And for us, it's all about how you come to a conversation with your peers and how what we call, Jim, process an issue. So we call it processing an issue where you bring what you the issue you have front and center to you and ask for the group's perspective. We do it in a very controlled way that allows people to get their questions and ideas in front of you. And really, the whole idea is to just bring diverse perspectives to the table. So that's one of the other magics behind what we think about is that we've got to build a group of 12 people that think differently as well. Because it's not going to, if I'm just sitting around
No.
the table with 11 buddies that all think the same way I do, that's not going to be helpful. So it's that.
So that sounds like, the chapter leader has to really be conscious of the chemistry within the
Yes.
group.
And make it safe so that I can be processing an issue and or coming up with something, and Jim can jump in and go, "Man, that I would never do that. And here's why." The leader, the chairman, has to make it safe by going, "Hold on, Jim. Like, why don't you rephrase that?" And so it ends up with that kind of conversation, and then the action always ends up being you as the CEO. What decisions do you want to make? And it could be I'm not going to do anything with it. I appreciate the feedback. I still want to talk about it, but it's really it's getting those perspectives, and you only get it if you come to the table with some level of humility and vulnerability. Everybody uses those words, but you'll get eaten alive if you come to the table with 12 other CEOs and act like you have every answer figured out. You just want them to nod their heads. They're not going to do that.
a common problem would be we don't know what our blind spots are. Is there a common blind spot you see that CEOs come to their peer group with?
Yes, I mentioned it, but it's we see it all the time. This blind spot is how we unknowingly search for a confirmation bias. We gather all this information that just validates it, and so it ends up the queue. I remember this happened to me early on when I first joined, Jim, and I was processing an issue, and I remember the chairman said, don't bring us an issue where everything you've already studied is good and the opposite is bad. Like, that can't be. Like, there has to be good and bad to everything you're considering. And his point was, I was just gathering the data so I could tell you guys why I was going to do this, and you'd all nod your head. I got to get the bad stuff too.
It seems to me that everyone talks about the loneliness that occurs once you become the leader, the CEO of a company or business organization, that it can be lonely. It seems to me Vistage and groups like yours are the antidote.
We think so. It's one of the things that we hear from our members all the time is they'll say they're either lonely. The two biggest things we hear, Jim, is they're lonely or they're stuck in the weeds. Like they can't figure out how to get out of it. And
Yeah.
so we bring them this spot where they can be themselves and go there with all your fears and anxieties. Because you know that, like, it's hard to do that. As a leader, it's hard to do that with your team, and it's really hard to do that with a board. You go to the board and say, "Colin, I'm confused." The board's like, "Oh, you have a great, nice meeting," and when you leave, they're like, "We got to get rid of that guy." So, so you gotta have that kind of surrounding, that kind of support, and that's what it feels like. And you're what it feels like is you can make that decision. You get confident because you got everyone around the table that now is vested with you. And even if it goes sideways, they're going to help you come up with some ideas on how to get out of that.
I think of the things that business leaders have to work on. The important pillars for them are strategy, capital allocation, their people, their culture. Do you find that one moves the needle more than the other? And is it changing because of the pace of things quickening?
Yeah, good question. Yeah,
Because on the capital allocation question, I see people really scratching their heads about AI, new technology. It's in the news. It's in the business news every day. Are we going too fast? Are we going too slow? How do you find that? How do you find that Goldilocks just right?
yeah. Well, I think like right now, especially mid-sized businesses, those are it feels really uncertain to them. I mean, it feels uncertain. You name it with the tax environment, the tariffs, AI, and that it feels confusing to a lot of people. So you're right. People are trying to figure out how to allocate capital. What I worry about that we talk about a lot is I worry that the gold everybody thinks in AI, at least in the mid-sized businesses, they think it's going to be a productivity driver without investing in people. And so that ends up being like the big dream that I can still keep my business growing or even more profitable with less people. And it doesn't always work out that way. So we do a lot of education on AI looking for like real world applications so people don't just spend their time looking for some fun things to do that distract them. But I think the big needle mover is the softest one. When I kinda look at I look at, like, strategy, culture, organization, the way results and execution, the big needle mover is culture, and that's the one that I see really skilled leaders do a much better job of, is they understand how to get that culture on track through consistency, through time. They don't try and rush it with command and control leadership, thinking it can happen overnight. But the great companies that we get the chance to support, they'll always start with that, Jim. It won't be like the big idea. It won't be, the big product. It'll be how the culture ended up being the one that just helps them continue to innovate and be successful.
You shouldn't have to wonder how to make Mother's Day meaningful. That's our passion. With our amazing mom bouquet and thoughtful gifts, all designed to make her day. 1-800-Flowers.com. Give beautifully.
I had a chat recently with another friend who's run very, very big companies and now is doing a portfolio of boards and advisory and investing. And we were talking about how the compact with our teams has changed because of these accelerated changes in technology. And yeah, I would tell you that being still chair of the Flowers companies, 1-800 Flowers and companies, is It's changed there. It used to be not stated, but implied, you do your job, you keep your head down, you work hard, you're secure here. And that promise can't be made anymore. And so the way we've gone about it is we're saying, look, we can't promise you that things aren't going to change. We can promise you they are going to change. But what we can promise is that we're going to do everything we can to invest in you so that you have the new skills and the new technologies at your fingertips so that if it's here or elsewhere, you're a better trained, better, more capable performer because you have the familiarity and access and comfort with these skills. So we've doubled down on education, enlivened our Fresh University program, where we're doing workshops and doing online classes, in-person classes, as fast as we can to get people up to speed because I feel he felt that the compact has changed. Any sense of that going on within your organizations? You get this big view over these 45,000 businesses. You get pattern recognition earlier than almost anybody else will.
Yeah, I love how you framed it. I mean, we think that's one of the things that I like to talk about that's really similar to what you said is that for people, the skills to train them on are ones that are transferable. And sometimes that can sound counterintuitive to leaders like, what? I train them and they leave? Yeah, they might, right? Because they have better skills. But
The more
what's
marketable.
the alternative? Don't train them. So I think one of the
Mm.
things that we see on for the pattern recognition is the companies that can go into it with this belief that culture starts with respect for the individual. Like you got to respect every individual. That's what I think really revealed itself during COVID, where a lot of leaders thought they could now take some shortcuts and say, I mean, there were all so many that thought like, I will tell you what to believe and what not to believe. That made it hard for people. Like it's, just respect me as a person, create a great working environment for me. And that's what we really try to work on. Even to your point, even when you have to make some difficult decisions, as long as people feel respected and you feel like you're continuing to invest in them, then they'll leave with a good taste in their mouth. I'm coming off of a high right now. We just celebrated some anniversaries. I told you I just had my 10-year anniversary just 20 minutes ago, but had two employees, one at 25 years and one at 20. And that's what they both pointed out in their talk is just always feel like they could be themselves and be respected as individuals. That's what I strive for.
Commenting as I did on the fact that you get this pattern recognition seat, is there anything you do with your data to homogenize it and redistribute it to your chat?
Little bit. So the Wall Street Journal Small Business Confidence Index, that's by us. We're the ones that power that data. So and that's a pretty big brand statement for us. So you see that published every month, just to talk about how small medium-sized businesses are feeling about the confidence in the economy. We do that. We're talking about trying to do more. What we also do is a little bit of work on helping them understand the value of their business, Jim, through some key metrics. So some business valuation studies, just so they understand how they could position themselves for the future. But we think there's opportunities for more of that. What we struggle with is we want to continue to keep every meeting confidential, right? So you can do an aggregate roll up, got it, but we just want to make sure because our members join so they can go in there and talk about things that are extremely confidential.
Who drops out of your program?
Well, when people have successful exits, which is something we're proud of, so we talk about our goal is better leaders, better decisions, better outcomes. So we love that when that happens. And then I would say the ones that so those we celebrate. The ones we don't celebrate are the ones that don't give it enough time. So they jump in and expect something to happen fast. When this is a business where you've got to invest in relationships, it's going to take you a year or two before you really start to see the big impact. And then I think people that really feel like they want to do it themselves. They feel like have other people's perspectives. Maybe they don't feel that they're that valuable to them. And those are the ones we ask to leave. We're like, yeah, it's probably time
Is
for you to go.
is that
Yes, it
happens, yeah?
does. It happens
Yeah.
when people just feel like, no, I got all the answers. We're like, you know what? You probably do. You should probably go figure it out yourself. I had an interesting,
You've graduated.
I had an interesting conversation with one fairly recently in front of a coworker who was just telling me that kind of he knew it all now. And I said, That's amazing, because you've only been a CEO for a couple of years. I've been one for 26 years. I certainly don't know it all, but yeah, you should leave. It's one of my, yeah, you should go. And there's a really good chance they'll come back.
I hear a lot about, and no one would know more about this than you, with the inputs you have. But people are talking about everything is becoming so much more complex, an explosion of complexity.
Yes. Yeah.
You
Oh,
see that? You see that?
I don't know if there is a meeting that isn't what we talk about, at least as one topic. Everything I use the word complexify, like people complexify it, and we're always just trying to bring it down to, for instance, we have this language in our business to say, I got it. What is your key success metric? KSM we call it. What is that? Because people have a million things. I know, but what is your key success metric? Like, in my world, my key success metric is what I call productivity per chairman, chairwoman, like how many members each of them have. That's my number one key success metric because I know if I continue to grow that as I expand the overall business and everybody's happy. But doing that, I find leaders, this is this thing I was saying where leaders feel they're alone or they get stuck in the weeds. And the stuck in the weeds is believing that I've now got to understand everything. I'm sorry I'm being long-winded about this,
Yes.
but you'll find this is that I often talk to people about it because I saw it in myself. They try and do everything from the ground up. So when you go from the ground up, you can only think incrementally, right? You can only think like, hey, we did 13% last year, maybe do 14% next year. When you start from the top as a leader and say that's good. All those are all the metrics, all the moving parts. But let's talk here about where I want the business to go. Then you can get that exponential growth. But you gotta do that from the top and still have the controls in place from the bottom. I find too often we are governed by, as leaders, we're governed by the incremental thinking of all the moving parts below, and they never add up to what you want when you think that way.
It's amazing what impact your whole professional life almost, impacted by a conversation with a person you respected, who gave you the time, he had the right position and insights, and changed your life forever. You think of him every day.
Every day. And I remember my first introduction was a board meeting that I got a chance to present. It went really well. He put his arm around me and said, "You did a great job." And I said, "Oh, great." And he said, "And I can tell there's some things you actually don't know anything about, but you acted like you did." I'll never forget that. He was right. I was faking it on the financials.
Sam, as you look across the breadth of all your members, if you were to drill down into common characteristics or traits among the top 10%, what bubbles up?
Here's what I'm most proud of with our members. You can be anywhere in the world. You could literally be in Argentina, United States, Malaysia, Canada, Australia, China, and those top 10% are going to have some really common characteristics. One, you're going to be completely surprised by the humility of these people. None of them are going to come at you like they're superstars. You're going to be impressed by their ability to listen. And what you'll see from them is they are an integrated person. They do not think of themselves as a different person in the community and with their family as they are in the office. They are the same person, and they've learned how to navigate that. A few years ago, I had an outside consulting firm did a study for us. It was on helping me figure out where to target my growth. And they came back and they said, "You guys are you're like the secret millionaires club." I said, "Really? Is that what you think?" Because everybody he would talk to would be "Ah, shucks, we're doing the best we can. And, I'm really trying to create great culture here." And then he'd read it and find this incredibly successful company. And it literally, Jim, that is a Vistage member is across the globe. That it just they're so connected because of that.
So they're humble, they listen,
And
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 they're
they're
an integrated person.
integrated. Yeah, we call it what our purpose is. We help high integrity leaders make great decisions that benefit their companies, families, and communities. And high integrity for us, it comes from the word integer, which means whole, because it's a whole person. And that's what people are. To me, why that is so resounding is that I feel like that was the biggest mistake I made early on in my business career. Is I had read a book and had this advice that said it was the worst advice I ever had. Even though it sounds sage, it said When at home, think only of family. When at work, think only of business. So I created a complete separation, and it helped me be effective. Didn't help me become happy, right? Didn't help me, and so I was always trying to be present, but with that kind of approach, what happens is you end up sacrificing on the home side because you're thinking about business all the time.
I have a friend, his name is Dr. George Everly, a brilliant psychologist, educator, researcher, and I had the treat to work with him over the last few years on a book we did. And he, sometimes like your friend Roger, they say something, they frame it a different way, you're in a different state of mind, and it just clicks for you. And he made the same point you did with me, which is you can't achieve work-life balance anymore, especially not in the roles we're in. It's not like we go to a factory and assemble things. He said, what you want to achieve is work-life integration.
Yep.
And that was a big unlock for me. And I would tell you over the last few years, since having heard him say that and explain it, it's changed how I think about things. And it's freed me up to, because you can't do it, especially if you're a small business, entrepreneurial kind of person. You your life is your work. And when we stopped trying to do that, it freed me up and made me think, it just reframed things for me, like it did for you.
And you enjoy it, right? You enjoy. I heard Jim Collins, a good great author. He's coming up with a new book. It's going to be incredible. He's been researching it, and it may be out now, but it's called "What to Make of a Life." And he talks about the fact that it's not that we don't want responsibilities later in life. We just want to choose those responsibilities. So,
Where you
that
can.
where you can, right? Yeah, that's what freedom is like choose the responsibilities where you can. That's what he defines as success later on in life. So it's really it's just got it's going to be a wildly successful book. I know.
Are the Do you find that the best CEOs are faster decision makers?
No, good question. I find the best CEOs what they do is when it comes to decision making is they have a foundation to build off of, right? In the world that I've learned, so school of thought for me is just making sure I'm really clear about mission, vision, purpose, values, and what I call operating principles. Like these are the things we believe in. So they start with that always. I think they're good. Is whether or not faster necessarily before they make that decision, they're good at identifying what their biases are. Like, what are my biases? Because I got to go get those solved. Because one of the biggest biases I mentioned is like ego, when I can say, I've made this decision 10 times. I know how to do this. Well, okay, but just go check that. And
Or
then
this time is different.
this time's different. That's right. And then I see, and I push it all the time, they carve out time and space to make that. Like carve it out. Don't just there's no pride in feeling like you're some maverick by just making it on the spot. If you need some time, go take a little time and carve out that space. And then they don't approach it. So when I say they're not faster necessarily, is they don't approach it with there's a right answer and a wrong answer. Because then you get scared. You don't make decisions. You get frozen. They approach it with there could be more than one right answer. The one I choose is probably going to be right because I'm going to be so invested in it, right? I'm going to make sure. And it's kind of like when you talk to successful people like you, Jim, and you give me your career arc. It sounds like you figured out everything perfectly along the way, but you didn't.
Stumbling along.
You stumbled along. But why it ends up good is because you were so committed to the choices you made. And that's what I find is once you get to that where you feel committed to the choices you make, you're going to
And I
make
think
those
that
decisions.
that can be a challenge. And I'll tell you in my own life, Sam, my commitment is my focus on building this company, on creating a company that's a relationship company that's focused on the gifts that we bring and the other kinds of expression. I would tell you, my brother and I knew an awful lot about technology before the average bear did, but we were so focused on building our company, we never thought about, well, how do we commercialize that knowledge elsewhere through investment?
Yeah.
So it's what got us here, but it's also may have held us back in other areas.
One of the things that I try and think about, I don't do a great job of this, but I say to myself all the time, and if you were with my team, they would roll their eyes on how many times I say this. I say, my job is I have to, as a CEO, I gotta continue to make sense of the meaningful outside. I have to, if I count on somebody else within the four walls to do that, then they're distracted. I have to be the one that is looking at the terrain and saying what other things we could be doing and how we could be thinking about growing our business. But sometimes, I don't know if this has worked. Sometimes I feel like I've made peace with the fact that sometimes my focus on making sure that I am completely myopic on what we're good at, I've sometimes that's helped me be successful as well. We got to keep our head up, but sometimes that focus helps.
Sam, what are your inputs? Are there podcasts that you like to listen to? Are there things you like to read? People you like to tap into? What do you? How do you manage your inputs so that that stew of who and what you are and how you think is evolving and changing?
Yep, I do a lot of reading. So for me, I've always got something working from a book perspective. There's a podcast. Have you listened to the Founders podcast ever?
I do.
Oh, it's my favorite one. So I'll listen to Founders. I listen to an investing one called Macro Voices, which is great because it has some political implications. I'm a Wall Street Journal guy every day.
Me too.
And I start my day really every day with scripture to ground me, which I've been able to do. That's probably the last 10 years where I wish I would have been doing that my whole life to just kind of start my day with handful of scripture to just make sure I'm focused on, especially on Proverbs is my favorite of all, to stay focused there. I think that's my key that grounds me for the day. And then I'd say my secret hack that I tell people is my secret hack is I've got an hour of planning in my day every single day in the middle of the day, not the beginning, not the end. But I got it. So it almost feels like compared to my older work life, my first 20 years, it almost feels like I'm on vacation every day. Because I could see every day I'm only like 3 hours away from I get an hour of planning.
Yep.
And that's where I get a chance to really think and explore other things that I'm interested in that could drive the business.
Do you know? Are you familiar with Dr. Arthur Brooks, the
Of
happiness
course.
professor at Yale, at Harvard?
Uh,
He's
Great
he's
book.
terrific. And his message is so simple and so clean. I had a chance to have him on the podcast,
Oh,
last year, and it had a big impact on me, like you. And he talks about the 4 foundations of happiness, and it's faith, family, friends, and meaningful work.
yep.
And, it sounds to me like your embrace of faith has not been a full life experience. It's something you maybe came to or came back to a decade ago.
Yep, I'd say came back to, it was when I had an athletic career. I was a, distance runner, and I had a lot of success. And so I was really close, then because you kinda as athletes, you grab to faith sometimes because you feel like that's an advantage, and I think that's where my head really was, like, I remember when I got to college, I learned how to pray differently, but I used to pray like this before that, you know, "Please help me destroy these people so I can make sure that they know that, I'm dominant." I had that kinda stuff. Then I remember I got to college and the coach is like, "That's not how you talk." It's like so I learned to get better there, but then, I don't know, over the years, go to church and that, but I didn't stay close enough. And over the last 10 years, that's reignited my spirit a lot. Just making sure I got back to that, got back to, what's important in life. And that's
And
been a great journey.
and tell me, how are you deliberate about the friends component in that?
Great question. I got some incredible friends that I've known for 50 plus years that we're still talking about, we're still sharing scripture and fellowship, every day via text. So I have those were some of the choices that really helped me is making sure I surrounded myself with people along those lines, friends and family that think the same way. I think
Mhm.
that's what gave me the inspiration.
Good for you. And, family?
Got 3 beautiful boys. My wife I've been married to for 40 years, my high school sweetheart. Hard to believe. She's just the most amazing woman ever. And I've 3 boys with one of them actually runs our licensee business here at Vistage. And my middle one is a consultant. He's just got back to get his master's at Georgetown. And my youngest is an engineer at Texas Instrument. And my youngest, if you can see me, I was a distance runner. I'm 6 feet, 175 pounds. So are my other 2 boys. My youngest was a 310-pound nose tackle for SMU. I don't know how that happened. It's amazing. Yeah, just great kids. I'm really, really blessed with that.
Finally, Sam, the seat you have is a remarkable place to see and to learn and to influence the future of so many people and their businesses. As the world continues to evolve and technology pace seems to ever increase, what what do you counsel your chapter leaders about what the successful CEO of the future, what new tools do they need in their tool bag?
One of the things that, like right now, if you just look at in across the world, Jim, we have thousands of speakers that we bring into our sessions, and our chairman and chairwomen get to choose whom they would like based upon what their group wants. Number one right now, I'll tell you number one and two. Number one is AI. People want to know about AI, just as you asked.
Everywhere.
It's unbelievable, and every investor wants to know about AI, whether it's good, bad for your business. And number two for us right now, and I think this has a lot to do with what happened with the pandemic, is number two is culture. People are still trying to figure out, how do I make culture an advantage? And I think I think the CEOs of the future that can figure that out, like you see how different the world is now from, I think when I was first looking to grow my career, all I cared about is who was going to pay me the most money, right? But where can I go, and how can you give me the fastest career? People don't think that way now. People, which I think is terrific. People want to work for companies they believe in. Want to work for companies that have something that has a purpose that feels good. And I think that the best CEOs are figuring out how to organize that so they can attract people that really have a passion for the work that they do and can build the kind of culture that can sustain. AI skills are going to matter. Technology skills are going to matter. But as a leader, you got to be the one that figures out how to make this culture run. And that's the skill that still is going to be the most in demand.
I think those two concerns are should be the concerns. They're my concerns. Everyone I talk to is concerns because, as you say, COVID changed everything. I'm an old dog. I like people in the office. Uh, I'm not. I get more comfortable with remote, but look, these things are changing and they're changing over time. And you have thoughtful people who I respect, like Jamie Dimon saying, "We're back in the office." And you have other people saying, "Hey, look, the world has changed a different place, and if I get the most talented person, okay, that's fine, but they're gonna do that specialized function, so they don't need to be plugged into who and what we are. We don't need to know much about them. But then how do I maintain this culture here?" And all of a sudden, this part of the office is empty those days, and I'm not the CEO anymore, and thank God we have a real CEO with real talents and real skills. But that's the challenge he has and his management team have is how do you, uh, how do you be deliberate about organizing this culture? And so that again, we can't control it, but we can influence it. What are those dials we have? So I can see why that's number one on the hit parade. And I agree, it consumes me every day. Old dog, yes, but I'm trying to learn. I have good young people around me who say, "Well, I really don't know how to use OpenClaw myself." I said, "Well, this week you're going to have to figure it out because next weekend you got to teach me."
I'm glad you're doing that. I'm trying to do the same, but yeah, it really is a challenge. I find that challenge I have right now is I like our rhythm is 2 days, Tuesday, Thursday in the office in San Diego. And then I've not let, we've a lot more people have now become remote as we've recruited some great talent. And I struggle with it sometimes. And my chief administrative officer who runs legal and HR always says, "Hey, whenever I'll struggle and say, maybe we should get another day in the office," she'll go, "Okay, but first start with the managers, because that's where it's all like, are you feeling this way, Sam? Because, you can't see everything, because if the managers aren't feeling that way, you're good." But I get to be an old dog sometimes of that as well, as I want to see everybody here every day. And for me, it feels harder to lead when I can't see him here every day. I'm
I feel the
challenged by
same
that.
way. I'm
I'm
sure there are
challenged.
people who are much more adaptive than I,
Me too.
grew up in different circumstances and educated differently. But yeah, I struggle with that, and that's why I did what you did. I fired myself
Yeah.
a year ago. He had to go.
Ted, you could see that guy. Well, I know, remember the old, he was In Search of Excellence, Tom Peters, and he would say,
Sure.
management by walking around. Remember? That's
Yeah, I
still
walk around, I don't even bump into anybody.
that's my favorite way to lead. So it bums me out if I'm here on a Monday and hardly anybody else is here. I want to see people.
Sam, I'm so glad we got reconnected after all these years. Congratulations on the amazing career you've had, and congratulations on what you're doing at Vistage. 10 years and 40 minutes ago, celebrating your 10th year anniversary. What a great achievement! And it must make you feel when on the our friend Dr. Arthur Brooks' 4 count, you certainly are doing meaningful work.
It definitely feels that way. When I check in every day, I tell people I always walk up the stairs. I never take the elevator, and I check in, badge in, and I just ask myself the question: would I do this for free? And if the answer is yes, I'll be in the office. If one day I say I won't do it for free, I'm out. But it feels like meaningful work, and as I said, you're just a big influence on me early on in my career to see a CEO who really thought that way and built a company around the things that he believed in. So it was an honor to spend time with you.
Thanks for your time today, Sam. Terrific to learn more about you and about Vistage.
Thanks, Jim. Great to see
Now,
you.
Sam, last question. If anyone wanted to get in touch with you to find out about joining one of your chapters, how do they connect with you at Vistage?
Yep, you just go to www.vistage.com, or you can send a note to me, sam.reese@vistage.com, and we'll find the right people to talk to you.
And I'm sure you'll have some inquiries. Thanks, Sam. Great spending time with you.
Thanks, Jim. All the best.
Bye.